But inflation figures are what are going to be focusing an awful lot of minds today back home, as we've seen a 40-year high, a fresh 40-year high. We seem to get a new one of those all the time. It's not since 1982 that we've seen the figures that we've got under the latest CPI figures, Consumer Price Index. The 12 months to October, those figures were released at 7 o'clock this morning. We saw 11.1% inflation. Now, bear in mind that it was 10.1% back in the 12 months to September, and that actually the expectation had it would be a lower increase than that. Well, let's talk about all of this with Jonathan Ashworth. He's Labour MP and Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, and he joins us right now. Good morning to you, Jonathan.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Your reaction, first of all, to that inflation news?
Well, deeply concerning. This is a 40-odd year high. In fact, inflation for food and drink is at 16% year on year. I think that's the highest.
It feels like more than that in the shops when I go to the supermarket, though.
Yeah, absolutely. The weekly shopping bill has gone up and up and up. I mean, everyone is seeing that in the shops. And, of course, inflation hurts the poorest. It erodes people's purchasing power in the value of their earnings. It erodes people's pensions. It's deeply concerning. And I would suggest that we are less able to weather these storms because of 12 years of lacklustre growth and lacklustre economic performance in the UK. And, of course, because of the most disastrous budget 8 weeks ago, which led to a spike in borrowing costs, a run on pension funds, and mortgage rates ricocheting around the money markets, with many homeowners now facing huge increases in their mortgages.
Are we going to mention the fact that we shut down the British economy for a year and a half for lockdowns supported by the Labour Party? I mean, the main reason we've been in this mess, prices were going up even before the invasion of Ukraine. The main reason this mess is because we basically shut down our economy for a year and a half.
Nobody denied that shutting down the economy was going to have an economic impact. And, of course, we did support lockdowns because we believed that before we had a vaccine, that we had to limit our social interactions.
You wanted lockdowns to continue long after we'd vaccinated people. But I'm just saying, it's amazing how much the mini budget from Liz Truss comes up before anyone mentions we locked down our economy for a year and a half and paid people to sit at home twiddling their thumbs, and we're surprised we've got mass inflation.
Well, the reason that mini budget comes up so much is because it led to a crisis on the markets with gilt yields rising and a run on pension funds, which in turn led to mortgage lenders withdrawing mortgage offers and putting more expensive mortgage offers on the table as a consequence of that budget. So that's why it comes up so often, because so many people are facing hundreds of pounds extra in their mortgage every month as a consequence of decisions by the Conservatives in that mini budget. The question now is, how are we going to get inflation under control and grow our economy? I would suggest that when you've got 1 million vacancies in the economy, when you've got 1.5 million people unemployed and 2.5 million out of work because of sickness, but many say they want to go back to work with the right support, that we should be reforming the system to help people move into good quality jobs. But the government have failed to do that. Okay. So if I was the Work and Pension Secretary, I would be introducing significant reforms to our system to increase more people, to increase the labour supply, if you like. And by doing that, you will grow your economy, but you will also begin to tame inflation.
I'd have thought stop paying benefits to people who are able-bodied and of working age. That'll get people back into work, won't it? Everyone will take a job when they're hungry enough.
Well, you can actually lift people off benefits like universal credit if they were paid a good wage.
True.
The problem is we've so much poverty pay in this country that people's poverty wages are topped up by universal credit. Yep. I would rather people were paid a decent wage so they didn't have to rely on the social security system.
Here to that. I mean, just before I do want to move on to Poland, but just briefly, just in terms of the autumn statement tomorrow, we're expecting announcements including an increase in the living wage by about 10%. Looks like the triple lock on pensions might stay, but a lot of bodies like the TUC, Child Poverty Action Group, are saying that actually we need to have more focus on families, particularly on children. Where do you want the focus to go in terms of protecting people from the worst effects of the inflation and the recession we're told we're about to face?
Well, it's not an either or. Pensioners deserve a fair uprating in the pension. The triple lock should be honoured for this next financial year. That's what pensioners were promised. I've been putting pressure on the government on that front. We had a debate in the House of Commons where I was making that argument last week. But of course, working families, disabled people also deserve protection as well, given the huge increase in the cost of living. So it's not an either or. You can do both. But what you also need to do is put in place measures to support more people to move into work. If you've got 1 million vacancies, and yet you've got 1.5 million people unemployed and 2.5 million people who are out of work because of sickness, but many of them say they want to work, surely you've got to put in place reforms to encourage people and help people move back into...
Yeah, a lot of people say they want to work. Can I just say, just to get a statement...
Well, let's put the reforms in place and let's do it. I mean, that's what I want to do.
Okay, Rishi Sunak...
I'm a reformer.
Okay, Rishi Sunak, speaking in the G20 summit in Bali, has just said the persistent threat to our security and global economic asphyxiation has been driven by the actions of the one man unwilling to be at this summit, Vladimir Putin. He says there's not a single person in the world who hasn't felt the impact of Putin's war. He's blaming a lot of this on that. Let's talk about what's happened late last night with that missile attack or missiles falling on Polish territory 4 miles into the Polish border from Ukraine. The Poles have said they believe this to be a Russian weapon. The Russians have denied all knowledge, so they didn't fire a weapon. Joe Biden, speaking this morning at the summit, has said that he believes it's unlikely, in his words, unlikely that it is a Russian attack. Many thinking if it is, it was an accident. What do you think that the NATO, the G7, the G20 reaction should be to this?
Well, it's obviously deeply, deeply concerning. And Poland is an important ally of the United Kingdom and a friend. Our bonds of friendship are deep and strong. I think, what do I think? Well, I don't want to speculate because given the way that you just ran through the various different explanations that have been doing the round.
That's only some of them.
Yeah. So I don't think, me stood here talking to you on my iPhone in London ought to speculate. I think we should wait to see what our NATO allies, let them get on and investigate what has happened, but we should remain calm and cool, but establish all the facts as best we possibly can.
Indeed. Well, Mr. Sunak has told the Polish president that the UK stands steadfastly behind the country. Just finally, overnight also, Donald Trump has announced that he will be running for the presidential election in 2024 once the Republican nomination. Your reaction to that news?
Well, look, there's no question in my mind, looking at the results from the states last week, the election results, that Trump was a drag on the ticket for those Republican candidates who most closely associate themselves with Trump. So look, this is a matter for the Republican Party to decide who they think is their best candidate to try and take back the White House. But it was a disappointing set of results in the US for Trump supporters. But, I guess a lot can happen in 2 years.
Goodness me, it certainly happened in the last 2 years, hasn't it? Jonathan Ashworth, really appreciate you joining us, Labour MP, Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary there.